Yes, we are. Amazing. So we are live again, and welcome, folks, to another virtual jug session. And we have a new guest for you today. It's Cedrick. I hope again I pronounce it good with my high school French that I had like years and years and years ago.
Perfect.
Of course, welcome. I love that you're being here. We're going to talk about Spring and Cassandra, but first of all, you're seeing a screen, but I will take I will do a hostile takeover because I need to share a few things. So you will probably see my slide now, and that slide is a keynote slide about the virtual jug. Interesting. My name is Brian Vermeer. For the folks that don't know me, I'm one of the hosts within the virtual jug. Last session was by Ivan. Now it's me you have to deal with. I work for Sneak, but that's not important. What I do have to say is that Sneak is also our sponsor because they made this stuff possible so that we have the streaming capabilities to do this right to YouTube and that you can all enjoy this. Sneak is enabling more than 400,000 developers to continually find and fix vulnerabilities, blah, blah, blah. Great sponsor. Thank you for that. However, today we are going to talk about Spring and Cassandra by Cedrick. Few housekeeping rules. And we all know we have YouTube and we have the Slack channel, and I will want to ask you all to go to the Virtual Jug Slack channel. If you're not there, just go to virtualjug.com and you will find the link to the invite link to go to the Slack channel. If you go to the live session channel within our Slack environment, please ask your questions there. Also, if you're looking at the recording of this session and you're not live over here, feel free to keep asking questions. I know that Cedrick is already in the Slack, and if there are more questions, he or me or somebody else can help you out with that. So don't feel afraid to keep asking questions even afterwards. All right, please share this live stream or the recording afterwards with friends, family, preferably both, but share it as broad as possible because I know for sure that this is an interesting topic. If you have any feedback about anything, feel free to ping us either in Slack. We are all there, but you can also ping us on Twitter directly at virtualjug if you want to ping the jug, or at Brian Verm if you want to ping me directly. Make sure that if you look at the screen right now and you want the best quality, go to the settings cog in the lower part and make sure that it is set to 720p because that is the resolution we broadcast on. So it should be nice and clean and at least good visible. All right, without further ado, I am going to hand it over to Cedrick.
Sure. Tell me when I'm live.
You are absolutely live. I see your screen and now I see your slide. So I would say I will mute myself. I'm here all the time. So if something goes wrong or somebody doesn't see you anymore, I will break in. Trust me. But
okay.
the stage is all yours. Oh, I forgot to say one thing. If you are in the YouTube chat, one of Cedrick's colleagues is there to try to answer questions if you're there. But if you want to have the full experience, I would suggest you go to the Slack channel. I will keep it to that. I will leave it up to you. Go ahead.
Okay. So thank you very much, Brian, for the introduction. So I'm very happy to be here in this virtual Java user group. I love Java. I'm doing Java for years and years and years. So I'm Cédrick Lunven, and I'm currently leading the developer advocate team at DataStax. So DataStax is the company behind Apache Cassandra. And so we are doing a lot for the Cassandra community, making Cassandra famous. So training, teaching, building reference application, do some support, answer questions, public speaking like today, everything like a developer advocate would do for the community. Personal note, I created a framework 7 years ago named FF4J. It's used to do feature flipping or feature toggle, enable or disable part of your application at runtime. And I'm doing this maintenance for 7 years. It has been my pleasure. If you want to give it a try, please go there. And today we'll speak not only about Cassandra, but also for Spring. We had a chance at DataStax to be quite close to the Spring team and the Spring Data team who is building Spring Data Cassandra. So No surprise, we will discuss about Spring Data Cassandra. And last but not least, you know, in the Spring world, the reference application has always been the pet clinic application. And I had a chance to build last year a pet clinic version of pet clinic using Spring Webflux and all the reactive stack. So in the end, I will share a ton of links, and this one should be like github.com/pet clinic community, simple like that. All right, so I do have a lot to cover today, but it's quite well organized. That's simply what's new with Cassandra and what's new in the Spring world, related to Cassandra, of course. So let's see. You know, I know you are Java experts, but are you Cassandra expert? Do you know what Cassandra is good for? If I cross you in the street in 1 minute, can you tell me what Cassandra is good for? So you know what? I will take 2 or 3 minutes in the beginning, maybe 5, not much, I assume, just to show you why Cassandra, what is Cassandra and what it's good for, and not explain you. I will just show you the architecture to make you understand. So Apache Cassandra is a distributed NoSQL database. You can install Cassandra on a single machine, single node. You do have on screen what are the capacity you could expect on a single node, 2 to 4 terabytes, and about, let's say, 3,000 transactions per second and per core. But you know, distributed means there is no real sense to put Cassandra on a single node. You want to install Cassandra on multiple nodes. And these architectures is a masterless architecture. There is no master slave. It's really masterless. Every single node is equal, and those nodes communicate to each other. You can group nodes as something called rings. Okay, so NoSQL distributed. So one main capability of Cassandra is it scales linearly. You need more capacity, add new nodes. You need more throughput, add new nodes. And that's it. And this is one of the only DB that can scale that way. Okay, I had the name of the others. You know, you can make a benchmark tells exactly what you want. Just let's look at the trend. Cassandra will scale almost linearly if you double the number of nodes. Okay, so one capability for Cassandra, linear scalability. Second, okay, the data is distributed, but do you understand what it really means? Okay, if I create a table, so in Cassandra you will store table, not really JSON, okay, table. If you will mark one of the column as the partition key, and the data will be distributing among your nodes based on this partition key. So that means select star from a table on Cassandra is not a good use case because you will do a full scan of your cluster and will get one piece of the information for every single node. So it's not effective at all. What you want to do is to build queries to access only a single node. And in the where clause, always provide what is in red in the slide. So Cassandra is good. You can do some 1-digit millisecond response time, even working with very, very large amount of data, petabytes. But there is a trade-off. You need to shape your data based on your queries to be able to access very, very quickly the proper node and the proper area where the data is stored. It's called the partition. Data is distributed. Data is also replicated. So there is a parameter called the replication factor who tells you how many times the data is replicated in Cassandra. And so when somebody comes and asks to store a data, okay, the data will be hashed. We will get what we call a token, which is the integer you see here. Each node is in charge of a range of token. And so I want to write, I can access any of the nodes, read and write from any of the node, any data. So for this use case, I hit this node, why not? But this guy is not in charge of the 59 token range. And so he will move the data in the replica, what we call the replica, replication factor 3. And if somebody goes wrong, one of the node is down, well, the node 7 with 17 here will store that data. And when the NAT goes back online, we will give it back the value. So that means that Cassandra is self-healing. So with no master and the data available on multiple nodes, you can lose any of the node. It's not a big deal. The service is still available. So Cassandra is really focused on availability. So you might have already heard about the CAP theorem in distributed system, stated that you cannot ensure at the same time consistency, availability, and network partition tolerance. Well, Cassandra chose to be AP, availability first and partition tolerance. And consistency, you will see that request per request, you tell how much consistency do you want for your read or your writes. Okay. All right. I show you one ring, but in a Cassandra cluster, you can have multiple rings, and you can install those rings wherever you want. So it can be geographical distribution or technical distribution, having some data centers in multiple cloud providers. The idea here is to have the single data technology, no lock-in. Oh, by the way, Apache Cassandra, there is Apache in the name, so Apache is the foundation. Don't expect us to change the license anytime soon. No, just saying. So with Cassandra, you can have the single technology available in multiple cloud and no lock-in in a way. And here you can read and write from everywhere, and the data will be replicated by Cassandra. So that's pretty cool. If you want to have the data close to your user, you just install a ring close to the users. And when they're using the data in real time, they will hit the data center that are close to them, and it will be replicated asynchronously. Okay. So this is just some characteristics, some capabilities of the Cassandra technology. So with everything that I said to you, let's understand what Cassandra is good for. So first, I told you about the linear scalability. And so that means Cassandra is used when you do have very high throughput, or you need very high volume capacity and still real time. So what are those use cases? Every read, every writes. Okay. Event streaming, Internet of Things, anything related to time series, log analytics, and this is probably where you already have heard about Cassandra. All these time series, writing a lot of data in real time, event streaming, or when we used to talk about Lambda architecture in the big data world, it was the speed layer or the SMAC stacks. So maybe you heard about all those terms. And this is the reason why for the scalability, you need more throughput. You simply add as many nodes as you need. Second, range of use case is all about availability. There is no master and the data is replicated, so you can lose any of the node. Not a big deal. So that fit, let's say any use case, mission critical, no data loss, always on. Okay. The purpose is really to always be on. All right. Third is distributed. So pretty quickly, you remember my map, distributed around the world or distributed in multiple cloud providers doing multi-cloud. It's not magic. You still need to connect those clouds one together, VPC peering or the magic of the network. Technically speaking, there is nothing preventing you to have this multi-cloud cluster. And at DataStax, we do have customers using these kinds of topology. So distributed, you can have your data wherever you like, which can be super useful when you deal with a topic like GDPR or regulation law that stated that the data still be in your country, stuff like that. And last but not least, this is cloud native. Okay, so it can work on very small infrastructure, small nodes. We want to scale out, not to scale up. And you can lose any of the nodes. So it's pretty easy to use that in a Kubernetes world. But I will go back to that a bit later. So reference, if you look around, who are using Netflix, who are using Cassandra? So two of the big names are Netflix and Apple. Instagram is another one, Huawei, yet another one. And you can see how many, so those are presentations made by architects at Apple and Netflix. And you can see that, for instance, Apple are 160,000 nodes of Cassandra running. That's more than 100 petabyte store, and it's deliver several million ops per second. I heard that anything that started with I something in Apple use Cassandra. So why Cassandra is using, why Apple use Cassandra? For two reasons, I think. I'm not at Apple, but first is probably the throughput, and the second is you do have nodes distributed all around the world. And because Apple is a global company with users across all the world, that's pretty convenient to have direct access to the data. It's like distributed data network, if you want to draw a parallel with CDN. All right, so I hope these 5 minutes, me talking super fast, answer your question, what Cassandra is good for. All right, so now the topic is all about what's new, okay? And what's new in the Cassandra world. First is our big new release that will air this year. It's not yet GA, very soon, and it's Cassandra 4.0. So the objective of Cassandra 4.0 is really simplicity, performance, and reliability, so self-healing. It's a huge release, okay? More than 340 changes, more than, almost 900 tickets including. It's almost GA, and it's really the first release since 2016, and it's a cross-industry effort, leading by the big two I show you. So DataStax is part of the effort, obviously, but Apple, Instagram, and Netflix as well. And as a matter of fact, why Cassandra 4.0 is so long to get out? Well, Apple stated that even if a single of their use case is not working on Cassandra 4.0, they won't go. So I can tell you that there are thousands and thousands of unit tests to make that Cassandra 4.0 rock solid. So it's now in beta 4. We don't expect any API change. It's pretty stable. And you can start trying Cassandra 4.0 right away with Docker run Cassandra 4.0, or go to Apache Software Foundation website and download the tarball. Okay, so what's inside Cassandra 4.0? First, what we call the virtual tables. So first, before, when Cassandra running and you need some metrics regarding what is stored in Cassandra, what size are the partitions, and what are the compaction stats, all metrics related to running Cassandra are only available through tools, okay? No tools, or exposing a GMX interface, which is pretty easy, right? If you need to scan these GMX endpoints, you can act on the performance of the node, and Jolokia and all related technology are not the best in those monitoring times. We want to do better. And how to do better? Well, in Cassandra, the answer will be dedicated tables in the system schema and system key space, so system virtual schema. And there now you will have your metrics available with the Cassandra query language, so the SQL sh command. So each time for new topic, I cannot spend too much time just explaining you what does the feature and why it's cool. And I put some links each time if you want to read everything that's changed for you. I also put the QR code, but again, in Slack in the end, I will share my slides, okay? So virtual table is one. Second is zero copy streaming. So when you add a new node to Cassandra, or you do some replacement, or you scale out, the partition, remember, the number around the cluster, will be rebalanced, reshuffled. And to do that, you need to exchange the data in between nodes. And to do that, you exchange what we call the SS table, which are the immutable files that Cassandra used to store the data. Well, before to do that, you need to read the file, serialize, compress, transfer, decompress, deserialize, reindex. So you can see whole steps needed to transfer data. It's not metadata, it's data. So of course it took a while. Now with Cassandra 4, I said we, but the Cassandra team provide the zero copy streaming features, which is simply pushing the SS table over the wire and it will increase the speed by 5 times for the streaming. Give you the link in the bottom. Moving on. Next is audit logging. So this one is more for reliability. So with Node tool, you can now enable audit log or disable audit log, and you will have log SQL command and authentication request. These features were available in the enterprise distribution of Cassandra made by DataStax. Now it will be also available in the OSS distribution. And that's pretty neat to log all the SQL commands and see everything that happened. You got the link and you got the Jira ticket associated. Okay, repair improvement. So just very, very quickly, when you deal with a distributed system with multiple replica having the same data, you want those replica to be in sync, obviously. And the consistency level in Cassandra should do that for you for every single request. But we know very well that a distributed system has some entropy, and sometimes one replica is behind and you might lose one mutation. So once every 7 days, we run something called a repair that will put back the replica in sync. And this mechanism has been improved because before you can only mark SS table as repair or not repair. And so if you interrupt the repair process in the middle of SS table, when you go back and restart the repair, you need to start from the beginning of the SS table. Now there is a new state in the SS table when you repair, and it's called the pending repair. And so you can go back where we stopped it, and the repair will be faster and works better. Again, here an article by Alexander Dejavonsky, who writes most of these improvements, so you can trust him. And I like the quote from Vinay Kumar from Netflix: "Without repair, your DB is hopefully consistent." So again, this improvement is all about speed and reliability. Finally, okay, there is a big Java logo, so now I do have your attention for sure. With the new Cassandra 11, you can have the support of the GDK 11. It's time. I know GDK 8 is out of support already, but now, okay, we will support the GDK 11. 11, which is a new LTS, not that new. I know that the new LTS will be released this year, 17th, right? So anyway, what is cool with GDK 11 is that you do have the new generation garbage collecting. So Shenandoah and the GC, and no post GC is a huge change in the Cassandra world. Cassandra is written in Java, and so how it works is you pull data in memory, and at some point you flush data on disk, and there is a lot of garbage collecting happening all the time. So with the zero post GC, yeah, that's a huge improvement. And the OLTP request can also, you can see the P99 from almost 100 milliseconds to 3 milliseconds. So I don't know the ratio we can have, but that's pretty awesome. Okay, so pretty huge improvement just by switching from 8 to 11. Internet communication, again, all about speed. So now for the node to communicate to each other, remember gossiping. Now it's done thread per peer, and now it's it used to be thread per peer. So if you do have 1,000 nodes in your cluster, well, you open 1,000 thread for each peer. Yeah, you can see what nightmare it could be. Now it's fully async and it's faster. And I think nobody has the courage to write a blog post on this one, just too techy. But at least you do have the Cassandra ticket if you want to have a deeper look into that. Okay, so that's Cassandra 4.0. And as you can see, there is no killing new features. It's all about simplicity, security, reliability. Okay. At DataStax, so not only we make everything we can to make Cassandra 4.0 air for Q2 this year, but we also building some tools to help you create application and deploy application with Cassandra. So it's not marketing-ish. Everything that I show you is really open source, and you can use that with your open source Cassandra 3.x. Okay, and because it's pretty cool, let's take a look. So the first module that we have implemented and would like the community to contribute is Stargate. You can go to stargate.io. Stargate is a data gateway. It will behave as a Cassandra node, coordinator node, without any data. So already that's a pretty clever idea. So now you do have a node with no data in the Cassandra cluster. So this node will take your queries. You can make this node scale, and you can make the compute scale, and not more and no more only the capacity and the throughput. You can simply make the compute scale and not the capacity. So what it is, it's a data gateway. Okay, it's a proxy. So you install that as a node in your cluster, and it will expose APIs to you. The REST API, which is kind of the Cassandra query language exposed as REST, GraphQL API, JSON API, so JSON meaning document API. So at Stargate level, we have implemented something called document shredding. So we will read a JSON document, and we will flat this document in multiple rows inside a same partition. So we are handling the data modeling for this one, but you can read and write in Cassandra with JSON document, okay, as it was a document DB. And you can search by any column, because we are doing the secondary index to do so. And that's pretty cool to be able to do a document-ish with Cassandra. It's open source, go for it. And of course, the SQL is still available for you. Okay, it's called Stargate. And that's pretty cool to mention. And it's available for Cassandra 3.11 and Cassandra 4.0. So drivers are cool, but DataStax has given the drivers to the Apache Software Foundation now. DataStax used to implement fully all the drivers in Java, C#, Node, I think PHP, even PHP, multiple languages. And at some point we say, okay, now even those drivers will be given to the Apache Software Foundation. Boom. So driver will be there, will still be there. SQL is still a thing. But now we also say, why not exposing out of the box some API from Cassandra? For the JavaScript folks or mobile application, why not, interacting with Cassandra with GraphQL out of the box? Again, it's open source. You can have a look, stargate.io. And there you will find a Docker compose to start right away. So one thing we want you to succeed with Cassandra, implementing new application. But not only. We want you to deploy application. And we firmly believe that the future of deploying database is either software as a service, you don't want to touch that, or deploy stuff in Kubernetes. Okay, today everybody uses Kubernetes for stateless application. I think, yeah, now it's a no-brainer, except some very dedicated infrastructure constraints. What about the data? Well, the data is not that easy. If you know Kubernetes, you know that storing data, you need some stateful set, and you don't know really how to work with those storage class and the persistent volume you are dealing with. So first, with the community, we implemented a Cassandra operator. So Kubernetes operator for Cassandra, or Cass operator, working with open source. And to implement this guy, we had to to create stuff for Cassandra, because Cassandra out of the box does not expose a readiness probe, a liveness probe, everything that needed for Kubernetes to know that the pod is available, the pod is up. And so we implemented the Cass operator, and also what we called MCMC, so that's API management for Cassandra, simply stating that now your Cassandra pod can expose an API, okay? So that's it for Cass operator, but not only, we also have a sidecar to expose metrics. And so there you will have a dashboard pushing all the metrics from Cassandra to Prometheus, a dedicated dashboard. What is cool with Cassandra is Not only you do have all the open source component around Apache Cassandra, but we provide you that as a Helm recipe. You can take it, look at the code, change whatever you like, Helm install, start, and try that. And it's really, the purpose again, is to make that easy for you to deploy Cassandra, okay? Implement application on top of it and deploy it should be easy. And you know, those two components, you might say, oh, it's just a dev, it's just the beginning, it's a POC, POV. It's not. DataStax, you know, we do have the Cassandra as a service in the cloud. It's called Astra. Astra is running in Cassandra and using Stargate to expose API. So this is production-ready tools we are using every day in our platform. Okay, I will go fast with that. No selling today, just content. Okay, so you saw what is new in Cassandra, what we put on top of Cassandra to ease you application implementation, and how we ease the deployment of Cassandra as well. So now what about the drivers? The Java driver you might already have used if you work with Cassandra. So we have released in 2019 what we call the Cassandra driver 4. Latest release is 4.10. It's a major rewrite from 3.x, so breaking compatibility. Okay, and this is why it deserves a talk on its own. We broke compatibility, but not for nothing. We added a lot of features, including a lot of asynchronous/reactive concern to have the drivers as fast as possible. Also, we used to have, you know, 2 sets of drivers, the open source driver, the DataStax driver. No, now it's a single driver. Everything has been open source. And this version 4 is focused on async. We now have extra features like execution profile, but I won't go into all the details. Let's see some steps, not everybody. Again, put the link to have all the details. Okay, so first, we change the Maven coordinates from this POM to this one, okay, and we change the package name. So first thing you need to do for the migration, change the Maven package, change the package name, and then see what's not compiling anymore and change that, okay? So we do have a guide to help you upgrade these Java driver from 3.x to 4.x, okay? And we also have a mailing list for you to ask any question, okay? So this is how you start the migration. So then we used to have a cluster object and a session object. Now it's simpler. We only have a SQL session object, and you will use SQL session object as you used to create cluster. So .builder, add contact point, add user, add password, change the settings, and you will work with your session object. So session should be a singleton in your application. This is now the SQL session that will stay open all the socket between you and all the Cassandra nodes. So remember, the drivers is in charge of health checking the node, load balancing your queries, and also is token aware. So remember in the beginning with my node in orange with 17, and I got a value coming, which is not part of this node. Well, technically speaking, if you are using these Java drivers, that won't happen because the Java drivers know who are the 3 replicas who hold this data. And so it will go and directly contact those nodes. Okay, SQL session object. All right, moving on. No more Guava. And I see you smiling behind your screen if you used that before, okay? I know it was so fun to download 1 megabyte of Guava just to say a string utils as length. No more. So now we are using the Java 8 features and, you know, plain old Java 8 component as far as we can. And if some cannot be fully done, we did, you know, we shadow some classes, but you don't have to worry about that. It's included in our driver. So no more third-party Guava dependency. So let's a round of applause. Yeah. Okay, moving on. we used to have the statement bound prepare statement not immutable. Now they are immutable by default. So you cannot assign as we used to do. You want to use builder. And I don't know what you are doing, but I feel that nowadays in the Java community is all about immutability and builders, just not to have this mess in the JVM and such. Fluent API, builders and immutable are the way to go. Oh, I'm waiting for a question on this one. Okay, I told you that a lot of effort has been provided to improve the asynchronous behavior. It was there, but not really cool. For instance, if you had to do some paging with asynchronous, oh hell, you had to count how many rows in the page and before you decide to fetch page number 2 and so forth and so on. So it was not very asynchronous. You still need to have all the record for one page to fetch the other. Yeah, now it has been upgraded and you can work with async result set and you can work with current pages as more pages and you can fetch and compose the completion features if you need more page. So you can have a look at this API at a glance. You immediately see that the API is simpler. Speaking of improving asynchronous behavior, we also now provide the reactive part. So reactive result set. So for this one, we wrapped, now I can ask you a question. Did you use Eric Java? Did you use yada, yada, yada? We use the specification, of the reactive part, and we implement our own reactive module using the TCK, which is the kit to validate that your app is fully reactive. And immediately, it's not the Spring part yet, but you can immediately imagine that Spring Data Cassandra reactive using that guy. And now all your Spring Webflux and Spring Reactive app that you can build will leverage on this reactive result set. And again, I can give you samples, but I'm working with Flux and Mono, which is the Eric's Java part. But you can also work with other Eric's implementation because what is exposed is publisher and subscriber. So really the specification. Flux.from is really me changing the subscriber as a Flux. Okay, Cassandra 4 support. What a surprise. It's a Cassandra driver version 4. It supports Cassandra 4. Yeah, we are genius. Thank you for that. So it's understand all these new things from Cassandra 4 I told you. But when it comes to interacting with the node in Java, you can access the virtual tables and you can change the port used to accept queries from Cassandra. Whew. Okay, I show you a little bit of code and it was what's new in the Cassandra world. Okay, so what Cassandra 4 what Cassandra is good for, Cassandra 4 overview, 2 open source Stargate and Cassandra, and what changed in the drivers. So now what about Spring? Well, I told you we had a chance to know Mark Palou, who is leading the Spring Data team in the Spring team, and he's actually implementing the Cassandra one, also the Redis one. So, and it's super nice, super aware of the change we would like him to do, and of course is all about not breaking backward compatibility with Spring users. But I feel that we are working closely pretty well. So, as a matter of fact, in Spring Data 3.0. they changed from the old driver to the new driver. So that means if you start using Spring Data 3.0 and Spring Boot 2.3, that means that now you need to use the latest drivers version. You will need to upgrade the same way as the drivers upgraded. So let's see what changed with Spring Data 3.0. So it has been introduced with the Newman release. So 3.0, it was last year. And it's funny, Newman release. I think they changed again the versioning. Now it's called 2021 something. They changed again the way to release those versions. They should be in Spring Boot 2.4.2, but they also use another versioning system. Okay, so not a lot of new features really. Maybe much more embracing the new philosophy of the new drivers. Still, there are some improvements like embedded object, and I will show that to you in a minute, and also support for the add value, injecting values from application.properties or any configuration file, and also customizable naming API. You will tell Spring Data how to map the table name and column name to your bin names. By default is 1-for-1, change for cabin name to snake name, and you can change this behavior. Okay, so upgrade to Spring Data 3.0. So it might depend of how much you use only the abstraction Spring Data layers and only the repository, or you need more operation of the drivers and you need the object Cassandra operation that do all the tricky stuff, the batch statement, the prepare statement, or more little bit advanced features that is not available in the global abstraction provided by Spring Data. Okay, as long as you are using the Cassandra repository and the high-level abstraction, you're more or less good to go. As soon as you start using some dedicated object to Cassandra, and you probably have to, because you cannot really build a full running Cassandra application only leveraging the repository, then this is where you need to do some change. Okay, so SQL operation, Cassandra operation. Driver statements are now immutable, exactly that the statement I show you in a minute. And here is a migration guide. Okay, so again, this talk could be a reference. If you need to do the migration, you can fetch the migration guide over here. Okay, and because the drivers change internally, we had some changes at the Spring Data level, but at the internal, it should not be a lot of broken change. I mean, Mark did as best as he can to avoid that. So upgrade dependency, driver Spring Data, adapt map entities, so change date, so local. So before we are using our own date, yeah, just because we like to create our own date. But now that it's the Java time has been integrated to JDK, let's use the time of the JDK and Java time local date, and using instance and such whatever you can. Change in Cassandra type, or I think that's just a detail now. All the Cassandra type are part of the enum and not a string, and some stuff I deprecated. Okay. We Spring team recommend to use Spring Boot, because in Spring Boot there is a lot of Cassandra configuration, Cassandra auto configuration, that based on the keys in application properties will be able to do a lot of translation and do the work for you. So XML is still there. Who are using again XML? Raise your hand. Yeah, I see you in the back. Man, everybody use some Java bin now. Okay, if you're still using XML, yeah, good luck. I'm with you, guy. I always created some XML namespaces with Spring 10 years ago, but that's for the older of you in in the audience. Okay, programmatic configuration mostly remain the same. Yeah, cool. So execution profile are the same as execution profile introduced with Cassandra 4. So now you can, when you execute a query, define an execution profile, and based on that, you will change the timeout and the consistency level. So you don't have to do that per query now. You can group that in profile. Slow queries, okay, for this guy, increase the timeout and maybe put the latency, the consistency to maybe 1 if the consistency is enough, because it will speed up the query. Okay, that's just some code. Hey, because hey, it's a jug. I need to put some Java code in my slide. All right, so new features is embedded objects. Okay, so which is new. Previously in Spring Data, you cannot have support for UDF, user-defined type. So, you know, in Cassandra, you can set some colon as real object, user-defined type. And now it's now possible using the embedded annotation. And you can see that you can even have multiple colon with the same type and use some prefix like here. So you do have support for struct, and it will you know, flatten those objects as UDT when needed. Okay. And so what changed in Spring Data 3.0 has some also updates in Spring 2.3 plus. And so this is where the shift happened. Okay, in 2.3, Spring Boot will use Spring Data 3.0 for any database, to be honest. You know, that tends to release this distribution and have the same for any database. Okay, so configuration must be done in application.properties or Spring that. So the keys has changed. Okay, so spring.data.cassandra is not exactly the same keys. Okay, so if I just show you what changed, for instance, now we can provide a session name. The port is now part of the contact point. And because we changed the load balancing policy in the driver, you also need to provide now a local data center. If you are working with a multi-data center Cassandra cluster, it is always good to know what is the closest to you, just to reduce the latencies. This is called a local data center. More keys, here you see, it's just a little change in the configuration, Spring Boot configuration. Okay, upgrade application. Don't want to dig too much into the detail, but hey, this is, here you do have the keys, you do have all the changes that has been made. And of course, you have all the links to help and the guides to help you migrating. But again, as you can see, not a lot of new features from the Spring Data team, but comply with the new drivers and best fit for, you know, Spring Data Cassandra reactive, now using the reactive, Spring Data async, using more the async. The paging repository use the new paging, including for async. It just align more the drivers with Spring Data. Okay, customizing the Cassandra session. So I don't know how much you already create this SQL session bin or the session bin in version 3.x. You can either let Spring Boot and the Cassandra auto configuration initialize your SQL session. This is what is recommended, okay, because it will done all the default keys and all the checks before building this SQL session. Also, it will probably create an auto-closable session. So if you close the app, it will probably properly close SQL session with a pre-destroy annotation. All is part of the Cassandra auto configuration. But sometimes you need to override or to upgrade the SQL session. And this is the case when you are using Astra. So remember, Cassandra as a service in the cloud by DataStax. You cannot really connect to this software as a service with endpoint, with the contact endpoint. We don't want to let you go using a binary protocol with the cloud services. We have provided some load balancer and checks. And instead of that, your application will connect to Astra using a two-way TLS connection. And to open this connection, you need a new parameter. It's a zip file, and it's called the secure bundle. And so here you can see some session customization to add some SSL context, credential context, OLTP profile, or the cloud secure bundle from Astra. Okay, so and connecting to Astra, so typically same keys. Okay, no change, but you need to use this SQL session builder customizer. Okay, all right. So it's almost the same. Just provide these customizer. So compatibility matrix, Cassandra driver 3.x will be compatible with Spring Data Cassandra 2.2 and Spring up to 2.2. And As soon as you start using Spring 2.3, yes, then you are using Spring Data Cassandra 3.0 and the latest version of the driver. So be careful, then you have some work to do and change some classes if you use internals of the drivers. And you can't miss version because there is no backward compatibility. Even if we change the package name, it will just be a mess. Okay, so almost done. If you are listening to this meetup, so now it's time to pay back attention to the screen. Here are the 4 key ideas I've developed in these 50 minutes. So first, Cassandra 4.0 is coming. It's fast, simple, and reliable. Drivers had a major release, version 4 as well, to embrace async, reactive, safety, and new features from Cassandra 4.0. Spring Data has been upgraded accordingly, starting 3.0 plus and Spring Boot 2.3 plus. And shameless plug, at DataStax, everything we are doing tends to be open source because we think that the more people use Cassandra, the more successful we will be. And it won't change the license. So we do have tools like to implement application, Stargate.io, and deploy Cassandra, Cassandra.io. So give it a try, give us some feedback. Always good to have that. I will share with you the slide, but I know this session is full packed of a lot of links, and you miss some hands-on and demo. What about that? We do have a YouTube channel at DataStax developer, and every single week we are running live stream 2-hour hands-on covering one topic, Cassandra with something. It's a coincidence. This morning it was Cassandra and Spring Data. Next week it will be Cassandra and serverless Jamstack. In 2 weeks it will be Cassandra, and 3 weeks it will be Quarkus. Okay, so if you can also rewatch the recordings. There, it's fully hands-on. Okay, and if you want to get in touch, I provide you my Twitter handle in the beginning. But we also have our happy Discord community, the Fellowship of the Rings, with almost 9K folks. So you can go bit.ly/Cassandra workshop. And hey, if you do have any question regarding Cassandra implementation in your project, stop going to Stack Overflow, go there. It will be faster. I promise. All right, that's it for me today.
Great, Cedric. Thank you for being here and for doing this this session. There's a lot going on in the live session chat, and Alex is heavily answering some questions. I have to give this remark that was in the YouTube chat that Nicholas in this case was saying that XML for the win, but not for Spring configuration. And I think we would all agree with that, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There were a few questions though that were not yet answered. We were talking about reactive during your presentation, and I'm not sure if that is the right moment to ask that. But why not use Project Reactor for something like that? That was already there in Spring or the Java provided classes. Nicholas asked, why create your own? And
so for sure we are using the reference implementation of the reactor classes. So when I mean reactor is really the specification. So that I think the specification is reactor, and with the object publisher and subscriber. So we use those, but those are only the specification. And as implementation, we did not pick RX Java with the object Flux and Mono, part of the Spring framework or Spring Reactive using those. We are stick to the interfaces, publisher and subscriber. Of course, what did Spring when they integrate our work was to change every publisher by Flux and any subscriber by subscription. They, of course, override the names of the interface by their own implementation. There is nothing preventing you. But the idea was, with the reactive driver in Cassandra, you can use reactor, but you can also use Vertex if you want to. Okay.
Okay, thank you. There was also a question about schema migration. Like normally in a relational database, you have something like Flyway. Is there something for Cassandra? And I'm not familiar with Cassandra at all, so maybe you know something that is.
So there are multiple tools there. If you search for Cassandra migration on GitHub, you will have a project with 250 stars, something like that. Liquibase also provide now a module for Cassandra. Now you have to understand, in a Cassandra table, you cannot change the primary key because the way the data is stored on disk is related to the data model. So these migration tools will work when you add and remove a column, but you cannot still change the behavior of Cassandra. You cannot change the primary key.
I think that's good to know. But I saw already in the chat that Liquibase was mentioned here, so we're good. It's also on tape. We have it now.
Okay.
All right. I will leave it at that for today. There are a lot of questions in the live session. And if you feel like you have a question now, or maybe tomorrow or tonight, or whenever you saw this, feel free to jump in the live session or ping Cedrick or Alex for that matter directly, and they will be happy to answer the question or refer to somebody else who can actually get into a deep dive of that. There was already a question about DSE and JDK11, and Alex was referring like, okay, I'll refer this to somebody else. So don't be afraid. We might not always can get to the question, but there's always somebody who knows somebody who can answer that question. So feel free to do that. I'm going to do a takeover of your screen for 1 second because I want to have the attention on one thing I'm personally working on. And hey, we have airtime, so we need to do this. And I think the whole community can benefit from this because as every year, just like last year, we are conducting a Java ecosystem survey, and this year we do that again, and we need your help. That means from all over the world. If you're in Asia or in America, it doesn't matter. We need it. We need your input on this. We're asking things like, what's the current JDK you're working on? Because, well, we saw today that within your presentation, Cedrick, you were talking about JDK 11, and people are luckily, hopefully, people are moving over to the new LTS versions and maybe LTS. Yeah, fingers crossed, and maybe even 17. But what are you currently using? And this is something that is beneficial for the whole community because then we know what people are actually using in both as a hobbyist, but also deep down at enterprise level. Like, are you still on 8? Are you using a current JDK specifically for season? Or things like, what is your favorite IDE? And this year you can choose multiple. So you do not have to choose one that rules them all. We want to hear about anything. So it's the 10 question survey, and we would love your help. So enough from my pitch because, well, I'm very passionate about this, and I hope this will help. Anyhow, Cedrick, I want to thank you for your talk. For everybody that was asking about the slides, Cedrick will post them in the live session channel afterwards, so they will be available. And of course, this video is already available. That means if I click stop and stream, it's already available on demand, and you feel free again to share it with anybody you like. Keep an eye on our meetup page and our Twitter handle because we have some new talks lined up for the coming months. So there will be a bunch of talks coming up from all sorts of variety of topics. So well, I hope to see you soon. Cedrick, once again, thank you for being with us. Thank you for the great presentation. And for you all at home, hope to see you soon until the next VJIC session. See you later.